The stars were quiet that night. They always were near the outer rim of human space, where the patrol route stretched thin, and the colonies slept under skies most Earth-born people would never see. Lieutenant Park stood at the bridge window of her ship, the horizon's edge, watching the endless dark. She was 34 years old, with sharp eyes and a calm voice that never seemed to rise, even in crisis. Her crew respected her. Her superiors had forgotten her. This posting was not a reward. It was a place where the military sent officers they did not know what to do with. She did not mind. The quiet suited her. Behind her, Sergeant checked the security logs for the third time that hour. He was a large man, thick across the shoulders, with hands that had seen too much violence and eyes that had seen too much death. He had fought in the colony wars 15 years ago, when human settlers had turned against each other over territory and resources. He had killed men who spoke his language, who had grown up under the same sun. He did not talk about those days. He did not talk much at all. His squad of 12 Marines slept in the barracks below. They were young, undertrained, the kind of soldiers the fleet produced when there was no war to fight and no enemy to fear. Hoped they would never have to learn what he had learned. The communication officer, a young woman named, looked up from her station. Her face was pale. "Lieutenant," she said, "I'm receiving a distress signal from Nu." Turned. Nu was a colony world 4 hours away at maximum speed. 40 million people lived there. Farmers, miners, families who had left Earth looking for a simpler life. "What kind of distress signal?" asked. His hands were shaking. "All channels, Lieutenant, every frequency. They're saying ships came out of nowhere, ships they've never seen before. They're attacking the cities." Stepped forward, his face was stone. "How many ships?" he asked. "The signal is breaking up," said, "but they mentioned hundreds." His heart went cold. Hundreds of ships. The entire human fleet numbered less than 200 combat vessels, spread across 12 colony worlds. There was no force in human space that could field hundreds of warships. "Set course for Nu," ordered. "Maximum speed." The horizon's edge was a small ship, a patrol frigate with light weapons and thin armor. It was built for chasing pirates and escorting cargo vessels, not for battle, but did not hesitate. 40 million people were screaming for help, and she was the only one close enough to hear. The journey took 4 hours. They were the longest 4 hours of life. When they arrived, there was nothing left to save. The planet hung in space like a wounded thing. Great black scars stretched across its surface where cities had once stood. The oceans boiled at the edges of the impact zones. The atmosphere was choked with ash and smoke that could be seen from orbit. Was crying at her station. She did not make a sound, but tears ran down her face as she tried again and again to find a signal, any signal, from the surface. There was nothing, only static, only silence. Stood beside at the window. His hands were clenched into fists. 40 million people, he said quietly, gone in 3 hours. Did not respond. She was looking at the debris field that hung above the planet. Among the wreckage of human satellites and stations, she could see pieces of something else. Dark metal, curved in ways human ships were not curved. Alien. "Scan that debris," she ordered. "I want to know who did this." The scan took 20 minutes. When the results came back, the science officer looked confused. "I don't recognize this alloy," he said, "or this design philosophy. Lieutenant, this doesn't match any species in the Galactic Assembly database." "Then it's someone new," said, "someone we've never met." She turned away from the window. She could not look at the planet anymore. Every time she did, she thought of the people down there. The children who had woken up that morning not knowing it would be their last day. The parents who had tried to protect them. The old people who had come to Nu to die peacefully and had instead died in fire. "Send a message to Earth," she said. "Tell them what happened. Tell them we need help." The message went out. The response came 12 hours later, not from Earth's military command, but from the Galactic Assembly itself. The Assembly was the great governing body of known space. Hundreds of species, thousands of worlds, united under a single council that had maintained peace for 10,000 years. Humanity had joined the Assembly 80 years ago, after first contact with the Dorian traders. They had been given a seat at the table, a voice in the council, and access to technology that had advanced human civilization by centuries. But humanity was young. Humanity was small. Humanity was, in the eyes of many older species, barely worth noticing. The Assembly's message was short. It expressed condolences for the loss of life. It promised an investigation. It noted that the attacking species, now identified as the Dominion, was a powerful and ancient civilization that the Assembly had chosen not to provoke. It offered no help, no ships, no soldiers, no justice. Only words. Read the message 3 times. Then he put down and walked to the window. "They're telling us to accept it," he said. 40 million dead, and they want us to accept it. Stood beside him. The burned world of New hung before them, a grave marker in the stars. "They are too strong," she said. "The Assembly is afraid of them." "And what about us?" asked. "Are we supposed to be afraid too?" Did not answer. She was thinking of her grandmother who had grown up on Earth during the water wars, when nations had fought each other for rivers and rainfall. Her grandmother had told her stories about those days, about how the world had burned and the people had suffered, about how everyone had said that peace was impossible, that humanity would destroy itself. But they had survived, they had rebuilt, they had reached the stars. Her grandmother had told her something else too, something she had never forgotten. "Fear is useful," the old woman had said. "It keeps you alive. But there comes a moment when you have to decide, will you live on your knees or will you stand up and face what frightens you? That moment will come for you someday, and when it does, you will know what kind of person you really are." Looked at the dead world before her. She thought of the 40 million people who would never see another sunrise. She thought of the Galactic Assembly offering words instead of action. She thought of whoever they were, who had decided that human lives were worth nothing. And she made her decision. "Set course for the debris field," she ordered. "I want to find a survivor. I want to know why they did this." Looked at her. For the first time in years, something like hope flickered in his eyes. "And if we find one?" he asked. His voice was cold. "Then we ask them some questions, and we make sure the answers reach Earth." The horizon's edge turned toward the wreckage. Behind them, New continued to burn. The galaxy had decided that humanity should accept its losses. Humanity had other plans. Admiral Han was 73 years old. She had served in the human defense fleet for 51 of those years, starting as a young engineer on a cargo ship and rising through the ranks by being smarter, tougher, and more patient than everyone around her. She had learned patience from the galaxy itself. When humanity had first joined the Galactic Assembly, they had been treated like children. The older species had smiled at them, patted them on the head, and told them to wait their turn. Wait for better technology. Wait for more colonies. Wait for respect. Had waited. She had watched other species look down on humans. She had listened to ambassadors from ancient civilizations explain, in gentle voices, why humanity was not ready for a larger role in galactic affairs. She had gritted her teeth and said nothing, because she believed that patience would be rewarded. Now, standing in her office on Earth, watching footage of New's destruction for the 100th time, she understood that she had been wrong. Patience had gotten 40 million people killed. Her aide, a young officer named, stood by the door. He was pale and sweating. Everyone in the building was pale and sweating. The news had spread across Earth in hours. Every screen, every feed, every conversation was about New. People were crying in the streets. People were demanding answers. The government had no answers to give. "Admiral," said quietly, "the Galactic Assembly has released another statement. They're calling for calm. They say that any military response would be unwise. Turned off the footage. She had seen enough. Unwise, she repeated. 40 million dead, and they call revenge unwise. They are powerful, Admiral. The Assembly says that any conflict would result in further human losses. Walked to her window. Outside, the city of Seoul stretched toward the horizon. 30 million people lived in this city alone. How long before they decided to burn this world too? She said, I want you to send a message to every ship captain in the fleet. Use my personal encryption codes. Tell them nothing in writing. Just tell them to wait for further orders. Blinked. Admiral, that goes against protocol. The Defense Council hasn't authorized any military action. The Defense Council is afraid, said. I am not. She turned to face him. Her eyes were hard as iron. We have two choices, she said. We can wait for the to attack again. We can hope the Assembly protects us, even though they have already shown they will not. We can watch more colonies burn and tell ourselves that we had no other option. She stepped closer to him. Or we can fight back. We can show the galaxy that humanity is not a species that accepts slaughter. We can make them understand that there is a cost for attacking us. Swallowed. The fleet is not ready for war, Admiral. We don't have the ships. We don't have the weapons. Then we will build them, said. Send the message, and then bring me the file on Dr. Minyu. His eyes widened. Everyone knew about Minyu. He had been the most brilliant weapons researcher in human history, a man who had developed technologies that made the Galactic Science Council nervous. His designs were considered too dangerous, too aggressive, too likely to upset the careful balance of power that the Assembly maintained. He had been expelled from the Council 10 years ago. His research had been sealed. He had been sent to a quiet teaching position on Mars and told to forget everything he had ever invented. Admiral said carefully, Doctor's work was banned by the Assembly if we use his designs. The Assembly told us to accept our losses, interrupted. I think we are done listening to the Assembly. 4 days later, stood in an underground facility beneath the Martian surface. The tunnels stretched for kilometers, carved out of red rock and sealed against the thin atmosphere above. This had once been a mining complex. Now it was something else. Minyu was waiting for her. He was 60 years old, thin and gray-haired, with the restless energy of a man who had spent a decade with nothing to do. When had contacted him, he had not asked questions. He had simply said yes. You want weapons, he said now, leading her through the tunnels. Real weapons, not the careful, approved, assembly-friendly designs we've been using. I want whatever you can build in 90 days, said. I want things they have never seen. Minyu smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. I have been waiting 10 years for someone to say that. He showed her the designs, things he had created in secret, in the quiet hours when no one was watching, things he had hidden in encrypted files, waiting for the day when humanity would finally need them. The Wrath Protocol was a pulse weapon that did not destroy ships. Instead, it sent a feedback signal through their systems, causing cascading failures across an entire fleet. One device could disable dozens of vessels. The Ember rounds were ammunition designed specifically for biology. Their bodies were sensitive to certain radiation frequencies. A single round could burn through armor and flesh like fire through paper. The Ghost Net was a jamming system that could hide human ships from sensors. It only lasted 11 minutes before the enemy adapted, but 11 minutes was enough. Can you build all of this in 90 days? Asked. Give me the resources, Minyu said. Give me the people, and I will give you a war that we'll never forget. Meanwhile, far from Earth, Lieutenant Park was asking her own questions. The horizon's edge had found a survivor in the debris field above Nu. His ship had been destroyed by its own fleet, likely to prevent him from being captured. But he had survived in an escape pod, drifting among the wreckage of his people's crime. His name was difficult for human throats to pronounce, simply called him the prisoner. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes that reflected light like a cat's. He breathed a different mixture of gases than humans did, so they kept him in a sealed room with his own atmosphere. He did not seem afraid. He seemed almost bored. Wanted to kill him. Every Marine on the ship wanted to kill him, but needed answers first. "Why did you attack Nu?" she asked through the translation device. "We had no quarrel with your people. We had never even met." The prisoner tilted his head. His voice, filtered through the translator, was flat and emotionless. "You spread too fast," he said. "You breed too quickly. Your population doubles every century. In 1,000 years you would outnumber us. In 2000 you would dominate the galaxy. Felt cold, so you decided to kill us before we became a threat." "Yes," the prisoner said simply. "This is what the strong do to the weak. We remove threats before they become dangerous. Your species is young. You do not understand this yet, but you will." 40 million people, said quietly. Farmers, children, families. They were not a threat to anyone. They were human, the prisoner said. That was enough. Stepped forward. His hand was on his weapon. "I should kill you right now," he said. The prisoner looked at him without fear. "It would not matter," he said. "The fleet that destroyed your colony was only a small portion of our force. More ships will come. More colonies will burn. Your species will be reduced to a manageable number, and then we will move on to our next concern. This is not personal, human. This is simply how the galaxy works." Stood and walked to the door. She paused before leaving. "You are wrong about one thing," she said. "You think we are weak because we are young. You think we will accept what you have done." She looked back at him. "We will not." She recorded the entire conversation and sent it to Earth. Admiral Han watched it 7 times. Then she began assembling her fleet. The tunnels beneath Mars grew larger every day. Dr. Minu had been given everything he asked for: resources, people, time. Thousands of workers moved through the underground complex, building machines that the galaxy had never seen. Minu did not sleep much anymore. There was too much to do. He walked through the main production hall, watching his creations take shape. The Wrath Protocol devices were small, no larger than a human fist, but each one contained technology that had taken him 20 years to develop. The Ember rounds filled crate after crate, glowing faintly with the radiation that would burn through flesh. The Ghost Net generators were being installed on every ship in the fleet. A young engineer named ran up to him, tablet in hand. "Doctor," she said, "we have a problem with the Wrath Protocol. The feedback pulse works perfectly in simulations, but we can't test it on actual technology. What if their real systems are different from our models?" Minu looked at her. She was talented, dedicated, afraid. Everyone was afraid. The news from Earth said that the Galactic Assembly was pressuring the human government to stand down. They said that any attack on them would be seen as an act of aggression against a peaceful species. Peaceful, the word made Minu want to laugh. "It will work," he said. "They use quantum-linked systems for their fleet communication. Every ship is connected to every other ship. That connection is their strength, but it is also their weakness. One pulse, one signal, and the entire network collapses." "But if it doesn't work," began. "Then we die," Minu said simply. "But we were going to die anyway. They have already decided to exterminate us. The only question is whether we will go quietly or fight back." He put a hand on her shoulder. "Build the weapons, build them well, and trust that when the moment comes, humanity will know what to do with them." On Earth, Admiral Han was fighting a different kind of battle. The Defense Council had ordered her to stand down. The government was afraid of the Galactic Assembly, afraid of making things worse. They wanted to negotiate. They wanted to apologize. They wanted to do anything except fight. Ignored them. She sent messages in secret. using codes that only the oldest captains remembered. She called in favors from officers who had served with her decades ago. She spoke to people who had lost family on New, who had watched their loved ones die on a screen from 1 million kilometers away. The fleet gathered slowly. Ships came from every corner of human space, slipping away from their patrol routes, ignoring recall orders, following a call that no official channel had sent. Captain was one of the first to arrive. She was 31 years old, with a scar across her left cheek from a training accident and eyes that had not smiled since New. Her younger brother had lived there. He had been a teacher at a small school in the countryside, showing children how to read and write. He had been 24 years old. She did not talk about him. She did not need to. Everyone who looked at her could see the grief burning behind her eyes. "I want to lead the vanguard," she told Admiral Han. "I want to be the first one in." "The vanguard will take the heaviest losses," said. "You understand this?" "I understand," said. "I am not looking for survival, Admiral. I am looking for justice." Studied her for a long moment. She saw the pain in the young captain's face, the rage that she kept carefully controlled. She saw something else too, a determination that would not bend, would not break, would not stop until the job was done. "The vanguard is yours," said. "Make it count." Lieutenant Park arrived at Earth 3 weeks later. She had been promoted to captain on the journey, though she did not feel like a captain. She felt like someone who had seen too much and understood too little. Admiral Han met her personally. "Your intelligence was valuable," the Admiral said. "The prisoner's confession has helped us understand our enemy. They do not see us as rivals. They see us as pests to be exterminated. There will be no negotiation, no peace treaty, no compromise." "I know," said. "What do you need from me?" "I need your tactical mind," said. "They have a staging ground, a massive space station called the Eternal Threshold. 200 warships guard it. If we can destroy that station, we cripple their ability to operate in this sector of space." 47 ships against 200, said quietly. "Those are not good odds." "No," agreed. "They are not. That is why we cannot fight them fairly. We have to be smarter. We have to use everything Doctor has built. We have to be willing to sacrifice everything." She handed on it was the battle plan. "Study this," said. "Find the weaknesses, tell me what we are missing, and be ready to move in 10 days. She spent the next week in the strategy room going over every detail. She worked with, who had been promoted to lieutenant and given command of the Marine boarding parties. She worked with, planning the vanguard's approach. She worked with Minu, understanding how his weapons functioned. The plan was dangerous, the plan was desperate, but it was also brilliant. The ghost net would hide the vanguard for 11 minutes. In that time, they would plant Wrath Protocol devices on the capital ships. When the devices activated, the enemy fleet would lose power, communication, coordination. Then the main human fleet would attack, using the Ember rounds to tear through defenses. If everything worked perfectly, humanity might win. If anything went wrong, humanity would die. On the last night before departure, stood on the observation deck of Admiral Han's flagship, watching the stars. Found her there. "You should be sleeping," he said. "So should you." He stood beside her, looking out at the darkness. 40 million people, he said quietly. "I keep thinking about them. The ones who never got a chance to fight back, the children who died not knowing why." "I think about them too," said. "If we fail tomorrow, there will be more worlds like New, more people who die without understanding." Nodded. "Then we cannot fail," she said. Looked at her. For a moment, the hard shell he kept around himself cracked, and she saw the man underneath. The man who was afraid. The man who wanted to live. The man who was going to war anyway because some things were more important than survival. "Why do you fight?" he asked. "Not for revenge. I can see that's not what drives you, so why?" Thought about the question. She thought about her grandmother who had survived the water wars. She thought about Nu burning in the dark. She thought about the prisoner, explaining calmly that humanity was simply being erased. Because someone has to, she said finally. Because if we don't stand up now, no one ever will. Because I refuse to live in a galaxy where the strong can slaughter the weak without consequence. She turned to face him. They think we are nothing. The assembly thinks we are children. Tomorrow we show them who we really are. Was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. Tomorrow, he said. They stood together in silence, watching the stars, waiting for the dawn. In the tunnels of Mars, Dr. Menu finished the last of his work. The weapons were complete. The ships were armed. Humanity was ready for war. The Eternal Threshold was the largest structure Captain Park had ever seen. It hung in space like a dark moon, surrounded by rings of metal and light. 200 warships circled it in perfect formation, their weapons ready, their sensors scanning the void. The station itself was a fortress, built over thousands of years by a species that had never known defeat. The human fleet waited in the shadow of a nearby asteroid field, hidden and silent. Admiral Han stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the enemy through long-range sensors. Her face showed nothing, but her hands were steady on the railing before her. All ships report ready, said from her station. Ghost Net is charged. Wrath Protocol devices are armed. Vanguard is in position. Nodded slowly. Open a channel to Captain. The screen flickered and face appeared. She was on the bridge of her ship, the Defiant Star, surrounded by her crew. Behind her, 17 vessels waited in the darkness, their lights dimmed, their engines cold. Admiral said, Captain, you know what needs to be done. I do. The Ghost Net will give you 11 minutes. After that, they will see you. They will target you. Many of your ships will not survive. His expression did not change. We understand, Admiral. Was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again and her voice was softer. Your brother would be proud of you. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, loss, and beneath it all, a fierce determination that burned like fire. I will make sure he did not die for nothing, she said. Vanguard ready, awaiting your order. Turn to the tactical display. The enemy fleet was massive, overwhelming, terrifying. By any reasonable calculation, the human fleet should lose. They were outnumbered 4-1. Their ships were smaller, weaker, less advanced. But they had something they did not expect. They had rage, they had grief, and they had absolutely nothing left to lose. All ships said, begin operation. The Ghost Net activated. Across the Vanguard fleet, the jamming systems came online, bending light and radiation around the ships until they became invisible to sensors. 17 vessels slipped out of the asteroid field and began moving toward the enemy formation. Watched the timer on her display. 11 minutes, 660 seconds. That was how long they had before they adapted to the jamming frequency. That was how long they had to change the course of history. All ships follow my lead, she ordered. Stay tight, stay silent, we do this together. The Vanguard moved through the formation like ghosts. Enemy ships passed within kilometers of them, sensors sweeping the void, finding nothing. The humans held their breath. 8 minutes left. The first capital ship loomed before them. It was enormous, bristling with weapons that could destroy a city with a single shot. Guided her ship alongside it, so close she could see the individual panels of its hull. Deploy Wrath Protocol device, she ordered. A small object, no larger than a fist, drifted from the Defiant Star and attached itself to the capital ship's hull. It made no sound. It gave no signal. It simply waited. 6 minutes left. The Vanguard spread out, each ship finding its target. One by one, the Wrath Protocol devices were planted, on capital ships, on cruisers, on the communication relays that linked the fleet together. 4 minutes left. Checked her display. 12 devices planted, 5 more to go. Picking up increased sensor activity, her tactical officer said. They're running additional sweeps. They know something is wrong. Hold course, said. We're almost done. 2 minutes left. The last devices were planted. The Vanguard began to withdraw, moving back toward the safety of the asteroid field. 1 minute left. They were going to make it. Against all odds, against all expectations, they were going to. 30 seconds left. A scout ship passed directly in front of the Defiant Star. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the scout's sensors flickered. Its pilot's eyes widened. The ghost net had failed 11 seconds early. Alarms screamed across the fleet. Ships turned. Weapons charged. 100 sensor beams locked onto the 17 human vessels that had appeared from nowhere in the heart of their formation. We've been detected, said on Admiral Hand's bridge, her voice tight. The Vanguard is exposed. Did not hesitate. Activate the Wrath Protocol. All devices now. Across the enemy fleet, 17 small devices came to life. They sent a single pulse through the communication network, a feedback signal that cascaded from ship to ship, overloading systems, crashing computers, shutting down reactors. 63 ships went dark. The remaining ships were thrown into chaos. Half their fleet had lost power. Their formation was broken. Their commanders were screaming orders that no one could follow. All ships attack, Admiral Hand commanded. Show them who we are. The human fleet surged forward from the asteroid field. 47 ships, small and fragile by galactic standards, but armed with weapons the enemy had never seen. Ember rounds tore through hulls like fire through dry wood. Shields collapsed. Armor melted. Ships that had been built to last centuries died in seconds. But they were not finished. The ships that still had power turned their weapons on the human fleet. Beams of energy crossed the void. Human vessels exploded. Crews died in the vacuum of space. Vanguard was at the center of the carnage. 40 ships had locked onto her position. The Defiant Star's shields were failing. Her hull was breached in 3 places. Captain, her pilot said, we need to withdraw. We can't survive this. Looked at the enemy fleet. She looked at the eternal threshold, still standing, still dangerous. No, she said, we're not finished. She opened a channel. Her voice broadcast on every frequency, human and alike. This is Captain of the Human Defense Fleet. We are not lambs. We are not prey, and we will never be silent again. She turned to her pilot. All power to engines. Set course for the threshold. Ram speed. The Defiant Star shot forward, trailing fire and debris. Enemy weapons struck her again and again, tearing away pieces of her hull. Half her crew was dead. The other half was screaming. But the ship did not stop. On Admiral Hand's bridge, watched the Defiant Stars approach. She's going to hit the station, she said quietly. Nodded, her eyes were wet but her voice was steady. All ships focus fire on the threshold. Support Captain's approach. The human fleet opened fire. Ember rounds slammed into the station's defenses. Shields flickered and failed. Armor cracked. The Defiant Star struck the eternal threshold at full speed. The impact tore through 3 decks, reaching deep into the station's core. A moment later, the ship's reactor exploded. The blast ripped through the threshold. Secondary explosions followed, one after another, as power systems failed and weapons detonated. The great station, built over thousands of years, began to tear itself apart. Lieutenant led his boarding party through the chaos. His Marines fought corridor by corridor, room by room, killing every they found. 8 of his 12 soldiers fell. 4 remained. They reached the station's central command center. The commander was there, surrounded by his guards. You cannot win, the commander said through the translator. Even if you destroy this station, more ships will come, more fleets. You cannot stop us. raised his weapon. "Maybe not," he said, "but we can make you afraid." He fired. The station exploded. The surviving ships scattered, fleeing into the darkness of space. Humanity had won. The battle was over. The cost was terrible. 23 human ships were destroyed. 6,000 soldiers were dead. Captain and the entire crew of the Defiant Star had given their lives. But the eternal threshold was gone. 63 ships were disabled or destroyed. The greatest military defeat the Dominion had suffered in 10,000 years. Admiral Han stood on her bridge, looking at the wreckage. "Send a message to Earth," she said quietly. "Tell them it is done." Stood beside her. There were tears on her face. "We won," she said, "but at what cost?" Did not answer. She was thinking of flying her burning ship into the heart of the enemy. She was thinking of the Marines who had died in the station's corridors. She was thinking of the 6,000 empty seats that would never be filled again. "The cost was everything," she said finally, "and it was worth it." The human fleet turned toward home, carrying their dead with them. Behind them, the wreckage of the eternal threshold continued to burn. The Galactic Assembly Chamber had been silent for a very long time. Representatives from 300 species sat in their seats, staring at the holographic display that floated above the central platform. The display showed everything. The human fleet emerging from the asteroid field, the Ghost Net hiding the Vanguard, the Wrath Protocol shutting down 63 ships in a single moment, the Defiant Star, burning and broken, slamming into the eternal threshold. And Captain's voice echoing across every frequency. "We are not lambs, we are not prey, and we will never be silent again." The footage ended. The silence continued. The Dorian ambassador, an ancient creature with 6 arms and eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall, was the first to speak. "This is unexpected," he said carefully. The representative stood. He was tall and gray, his robes torn from the chaos of the past weeks. His people had lost their greatest station. They had lost 200 ships. They had lost their belief that they were untouchable. "This was an unprovoked attack," he declared. "The humans have violated assembly law. They must be punished." Laughter came from somewhere in the chamber. It was not kind laughter. The delegate, a small being with bright eyes and a sharp tongue, stood up. "Unprovoked," she said. "Your people destroyed a human colony, 40 million dead, and you call the human response unprovoked." "That was a preventive action," they said. "Humans breed too quickly. They would have become a threat." "And now they are a threat," they said. "Not because they breed quickly, but because you attacked them and they fought back. You created the very thing you feared." The representative had no answer to this. In the back of the chamber, the human delegation sat quietly. They were new to this room. For 80 years, humanity had been a minor voice, easily ignored, barely noticed. That had changed. Admiral Han was not present. She was still with the fleet, supervising repairs and caring for the wounded. But Captain Park was there, wearing a uniform that still smelled of smoke and blood. She said nothing. She did not need to. The Dorian ambassador raised his hand for silence. "The Assembly must decide how to respond to these events," he said. "The claim that humanity has acted aggressively. Humanity claims they were defending themselves against extermination. Both claims have evidence supporting them." He paused. "However, I must note something. They attacked a human world without warning, without provocation, without any attempt at negotiation. They killed 40 million people in 3 hours. They did this because they believed humanity was too weak to respond." He looked at the representative. They were wrong. The vote took 3 hours. Species that had never cared about humanity before now spoke in their defense. Species that had looked down on humans for decades now praised their courage. Species that had been afraid of them for centuries now saw an opportunity to challenge their power. In the end, the vote was clear. They were condemned for their attack on Nu. They were ordered to pay reparations. They were warned that any future aggression against humanity would be met with assembly sanctions. It was not justice. 40 million people were still dead, but it was a beginning. After the vote, they sent an envoy to Earth. Admiral Han met him in a small room with no windows. She sat alone on one side of the table. He sat alone on the other. "You have won this battle," the envoy said, "but you cannot win a war against us. We have thousands of ships. We have dozens of worlds. We have been conquering species since before your kind learned to walk upright." Looked at him, her face showed nothing. "You think this is about winning?" she asked. "Is it not?" Leaned forward. "We want nothing from you," she said. "We have taken everything we needed. Go home. Tell your people what happened at the eternal threshold. Tell them how 17 ships slipped through your defenses and planted weapons on your capital ships. Tell them how Captain flew her burning vessel into your greatest station. Tell them how Lieutenant walked through your corridors, killing everyone he found." She stood. "And tell them this. If any species anywhere ever attacks a human world again, we will not stop at their fleet. We will not stop at their stations. We will find there, and we will make them understand that humanity is not a species to be culled." The envoy's gray face was pale. "You would destroy worlds?" he asked. "You would kill billions?" "I would do whatever is necessary to protect my people," said. "The question is whether you believe me." She walked to the door. "Leave now, do not return." The envoy left, the fleet from human space. For the first time in 10,000 years they were afraid. In the months that followed, everything changed. Species that had ignored humanity now sought alliances. Trade agreements were signed. Technology was shared. The human seat at the Galactic Assembly was never questioned again. Ambassadors who had once looked at humans with contempt now looked at them with respect. Captain Park was promoted again. She took command of a new ship, the largest vessel humanity had ever built. She named it the Nu in memory of the 40 million who had died. On the day of the ship's launch, she stood on the bridge and looked out at the stars, stood beside her. He had refused to retire, refused to walk away from the life he had known. His squad was gone, but new soldiers had volunteered to serve under him. They were young and eager, and they looked at him like he was a legend. He did not feel like a legend. He felt tired. "What happens now?" he asked. Thought about the question. She thought about the licking their wounds in the darkness. She thought about the assembly, finally treating humanity as equals. She thought about all the species across the galaxy who had watched the footage from the Battle of the Burning Gate and drawn their own conclusions. "Now we rebuild," she said. "We mourn our dead, we honor their sacrifice, and we make sure it never happens again." "You think they will stay away?" "I think they will wait, they will watch, they will look for weakness." She turned to face him. "Our job is to make sure they never find it." Nodded slowly. "I can live with that," he said. On Mars, Dr. Menu returned to his research. The Galactic Science Council had sent him a formal apology and an invitation to rejoin their ranks. He had thrown the invitation in the trash. He had new work to do, better weapons, stronger defenses, technologies that would ensure humanity never again faced extinction. He worked alone in his laboratory, surrounded by screens and machines, and he thought about the future. The galaxy was vast and dangerous. There were species out there who were stronger than older than the assembly, more patient than anyone could imagine. But there was humanity too, young and fierce, broken and rebuilt, willing to do whatever it took to survive. He smiled and continued working. Across the galaxy, in species that had never thought twice about the small, fragile creatures called humans, a new understanding took root. They watched the footage from the Battle of the Burning Gate. They listened to Captain's final words. They saw Lieutenant carrying his wounded soldier out of the burning station. They saw Admiral Han standing on her bridge, face illuminated by the light of wreckage. And they understood. Humans remembered their dead. Humans mourned their fallen. Humans grieved like any other species, crying and hurting and wishing things could be different. But when the grief faded, when the tears dried, when the silence ended, humans did something that other species did not expect. They fought back. Not for conquest, not for power, not for territory or resources or glory. They fought because someone had to. They fought because they refused to die quietly. They fought because somewhere in their strange, contradictory hearts, they believed that the strong should not be allowed to slaughter the weak without consequence. The galaxy had witnessed something new, something it did not fully understand. The day humanity stopped being prey. The day they became something else entirely. And across the stars, in council chambers and military bases and quiet homes, where children asked their parents about the strange two-legged creatures from a distant blue world, a single truth was repeated again and again. Do not attack the humans. They remember. And they fight back.